Hello, 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 and thank you for pressing play on the latest edition of the Michigan Soccer Central podcast, your weekly dip into the world's game being played right here in the Great Lakes state of Michigan. How you doing? My name is Robert Kerr. Glad to be here hosting the Michigan Soccer Central podcast. Once again, it was a whirlwind soccer weekend, both home and abroad, and happy to bring on this episode a deep review, more of a report from the location from the annual MSYSA State Cup Finals, the youth club season finale. We're in a unique position right now in between that said State Cup Finals weekend, and then next weekend is tryouts. So on this show, we got Josh Hakala and Brendan Schabath with a great report from Saginaw, Michigan. They had some really fun player names, some great action, some names to watch for the future, and ref pranks and hijinks. So stay tuned in for that. I myself this weekend did not go up to Saginaw, but I was around for the final weekend of youth soccer for my kids' teams, all sorts of end of season parties, which were really fun as well. And then Saturday night was an exciting evening in Royal Oak. I was on the call on 11 Sports for Oakland County FC, hosting the Flint City Bucks. Both teams came into the game undefeated. The Bucks, 3 wins out of 3, 2 draws and a win for the men in purple. It was a tight affair, very intense game. Really enjoyed commentating on it, and the atmosphere. There was a real deal intense, engaged atmosphere at the game. That was especially for one night only at Shrine. There was a conflict, I think, graduation at Royal Oak High School. So back there at Royal Oak High School next Saturday against South Bend. But that Bucks game, very tough. The home team lost to the Flint City Bucks by just 1-0. The goal headed in from Josemir Gomez, who has, I think, 5 goals in 4 games for the Bucks. And it came off of a corner that was quite controversially called in the opinions of the home commentator and fans. Check out that replay on 11 Sports if you're so interested. One of my favorite features on there is that you can click straight to the goals when you look at an old game. You can just click on, they have highlighted. You can go skip straight to the highlight of choice. So that was fun to be on the call there. And I really just wanted to say, pay attention. Teams or towns that have USL2 teams, and then many others in the Midwest Premier League and NPSL. We have quite the summer of soccer going on right now. And I got to say, Saturday night in Royal Oak between Oakland County FC and the Bucks, there was just so much talent there, and there was a genuine atmosphere. I think everyone should really pay attention. That's not in our soccer bubble. Try to spread the word that there's some really good live summer entertainment going on right now in Metro Detroit, as well as various areas across Michigan. We got a whole lot of competitive amateur action going around, and that's also being catered to a fan experience. Definitely cool to see the String Beans. I think they were a rock band of high schoolers at the county game, and they brought their crowd, and that was fun as well. Got to give a shout out to a couple former podcast guests before we get to our segment. Former podcast guest and actually before that, I got to say podcast guest Paul Duro, off to a good start as the head coach of the Bucks, 4-0 now on the season, a third of the way through the USL2 season. Hasn't lost one yet. County cutting it close, but still came out with the win. But other former guests doing well. Russell Cicerone, he was on the podcast around the holidays, and he is on Sacramento Republic, and he is currently top of the scoring leaderboard in USL Championship, netting 9 goals in 13 games. He's also in the top 10 in the USL Championship for assists, and getting another assist this weekend in Sacramento Republic's 1-1 draw with Tampa Bay. So shout out to Russell Cicerone, Bloomfield, Michigan native, making a mark for himself here in USL Championship this year. And then youngster, 16-year-old Chloe Ricketts got another spots minute or so. She's been getting some late game substitutions. The 16-year-old from Dexter, of course, is who I'm speaking about. And you'll hear a reference to her as she participated on a boys team in the MSYSA State Cup last year. And you'll hear that referenced on this week's segment. And so good to see her. Actually, she was making waves. The Washington Spirit was showing some pretty slow-mo shots of Chloe saucing them up a little bit. She's getting some social media love and a lot of attention for her little bit guest appearances or spot minutes for the Washington Spirit. And I guess we'll get into this week's segment. I'm really happy with this contribution from MSC and Michigan Public Radio and the Cup.us. We got Josh Hakala, as well as Brendan Schabath, play-by-play commentator this summer. He is the voice of the USPBL baseball in Utica, as well as an intern on the Tigers broadcast team. So he's excellent as well. So listen into the annual segment from MSYSA's State Cup Finals up in Saginaw. And they've got a great, they've got some good player names. There's brothers that are featured in this review. One with the name Extreme and another one called Legend. So listen in to Josh Hakala and Brendan Schabath with their report from the MSYSA State Cup Finals here on the Michigan Soccer Central podcast.
All right, this is Josh Hakala coming to you from Saginaw, Michigan at the Saginaw Township Soccer Complex, where we just wrapped up the 2023 State Cup Finals. And it was a great weekend where we had games going on left and right. We had we were doing play-by-play for the Elite Division and the Premier Division, and determining who goes on to regionals in St. Louis, and then who goes on to the President's Cup, or the winner of the Premier Division. I'm here with Brendan Schabath, who did the play-by-play on the other field, and we had a good time. And what was your take? Was this your first time broadcasting and doing the MSYSA? What was your takeaway?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, 8 games in 2 days is what you would think it would be. I'm exhausted, but in a good way, because the games are fun and they're long, and I played youth soccer when I was younger, youth travel soccer, and this really brought me back to those days of playing in tournaments and all the parents being there and everybody's friends and rivals. And you know, this is a team that you've played against, and they've been your rival for 6 years, you know, since you were 8 years old, and now you're 14. And, you know, and it's just, it's a lot of fun, and the intensity and the rivalry and some of the friendships too, just within the entire soccer community in the state of Michigan is always fun to explore and tell those stories. And there were some really entertaining games and some really good soccer. Yeah,
I guess what we'll do, since we have so many games to get, we won't go into every single detail of every game, but just to touch on each one and some of your takeaways from them. Like we started off on Saturday with the Elite Division. I started with I actually don't know what your schedule was. I was so wrapped up in all the prep and everything. I know that you had all this prep going on, and I had the U15 Elites in my first game. And Liverpool beat Nationals Union 2-0. J.P. Patino scored the goal. Dominic Kakash scored off a corner. It was a pretty even game. LFC really got a lot of their shots from distance. And I think one of the fun takeaways is the last time I think it was in the spring. It might have been the spring last year. You know, we had Chloe Ricketts playing, a girl playing on a boys team. And it was notable. We were like, "Oh, that's great." You know, she's you know, hanging with the big boys, so to speak. They're actually quite big at U15. And next thing I know, she's signing with a pro team in the Washington Spirit. And so when I saw that we had Michaela Perkins playing with Liverpool, and she was doing the same thing. I don't know if she's going to sign with a pro team, but it's fun to see them trying to compete against these boys and really doing a good job of it. But Liverpool ended up winning that one. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I got to start with the young kids too. We had, I think, from U13 all the way up to U19 here this weekend. My second game on Saturday was the U14s Michigan Rangers versus MFA Revolution. This was a really fun game, one because of the head coaches. That was a really interesting story. That was Lido Esquivel Gonzalez for Michigan Rangers, and it was Domenico Barone for MFA Revolution. Those two grew up together back in Grand Rapids at East Kentwood High School, won a state championship together. Domenico went on to play soccer at Michigan State, win some Big Ten titles. Lido went on to play at Western and then Davenport and win an NAIA national championship. And then they both came back to Grand Rapids, were coaching together for a little bit, and then eventually coaching against each other. And in this season, this club season, they were 1-1 against each other. This was the decisive third match. And it was really interesting, the match itself, because MFA Revolution lost their leading scorer a week before the state cup final because he got hurt playing basketball at recess. So he was out, he couldn't play, and then their best forward, who scored their opening goal early in the match, took a ball to the face. Alistair Allen, he had to leave, and he was gone for the remainder of the match. They gave up a goal. They tied it 1-1, did Michigan Rangers. We went into extra time, and eventually they scored, and MFA Revolution would win that one. But I just thought that was such a cool story, the two young head coaches going against each other. And MFA Revolution, they had 2 injuries before the match, and then they lose probably their best offensive player 20 minutes into it, and they still come out and prevail and pick up a big win, and it was fun. It was a really exciting game.
I think that's one of the best things about this. You talk to the coaches and some of the players and even the parents sometimes. There's so many like fun stories that connections like that, because the soccer world is a very small world. I think anybody listening to this will tell you that. But I had a U18 elite in the second game. Getting teenagers up in the morning is really difficult. To have them play 2 morning games like this, it's pretty rough. But one thing that came out of this, and this is the wind started to pick up at this point. It was a little breezy, and then it became windy. And it was the same wind, at least on my field, going from right to left. I don't know which direction you were facing on your field, but it was right to left, and it made such a difference. And in the second game, Kingdom SC, who really is like starting to develop, like, they're already a great club, but they've kind of expanded their reach in Southwest Michigan, and they scored an early goal or a goal early in the second half. Jacek Zielaskowski scores in the 50th minute, and it looked like they were just going to hang on. And Liverpool went down a man in the 87th minute, and you're thinking, oh yeah, they got this one. They're just going to, they're going to walk away with this one. And then they scored an equalizer in the 90th minute. Obviously for broadcasters and tournament officials, nobody likes to see late equalizers, but as a fan and all the parents, they were freaking out.
Right.
And but Kingdom SC eventually, with the man advantage, they took over. Zielaskowski scored a couple of goals late, and Johnny Strickler added another one to Kingdom FC ended up winning. But they certainly made it interesting. Down a man and still competing right to the very end of extra time.
I think the second game that I have to highlight is both the most interesting and the most boring that I had of the day. It was the U17s at the 1:30 slate, so they didn't have the early morning one. They got to wake up probably at their regular time for these kids, for the 17-year-olds. Michigan Wolves against Michigan Rangers, 2 very good programs. Michigan Rangers, I had 3 of their games from 3 separate teams on the first day, and I had another Michigan Rangers team here on the second day on Sunday. But so Michigan Rangers versus Michigan Wolves in the U17 at 1:30. Michigan Wolves, really good team. You could just see as soon as they started, the intensity was there, the pressure was there. They caused a lot of havoc for the Michigan Rangers. But this was the most boring game because it ended 4-0. Michigan Wolves won it pretty handedly. They scored a goal early, then 3 in the second half as well. But it was the most interesting because it had, I think, the single greatest name I have ever broadcasted in the history of sports, and maybe ever will. The center attacking mid for Michigan Wolves was named Extreme Hawk. XTREMEHAUK. Extreme Hawk. And he had 2 goals. He scored twice. He scored the 2 goals that really kind of put it away in the second half. They added another one after that, and he played a really good game in middle, and he was back and forth both on offense and defense. So great name, great game, and it was fun to watch.
Well, the third game I had, TKO Premier needed extra time to beat Michigan Tigers in the U13 Elite Division, and they had been, I think really what's notable about it, Dylan Ferreira scored a couple of goals in extra time. He's their top scorer, but they have made it 21 of the last 22 State Cup Finals dating back to 2018, and that's a heck of a run. And so you mentioned, I actually had the brother of Extreme Hawk. I actually, and he has an even better name. And I would even say that's a tough name to live up to. His name is Legend Hawk. And I figure like that, I don't know how you, like, as a parent, bless their heart. I love unique names, but man, to have an athlete with the name Legend right out of the gate, that's tough. And I just want to point out, sidebar, he didn't start, but he was really good. I will say that. But in that game that he was in, it was the last game of the first day. Michigan rushed Northville, beat Michigan Wolves 3-0 in that one. So that was but yeah, that was. I got a cool name too. I got a couple of cool names, but that was the best one.
Yeah, there were a couple really good names all weekend, but Extreme Hawk, when I first saw it with the X and TREME, I was like, is it actually extreme? And they had the pronunciation, and it sure was. So, he lived up to it.
Yeah. And do you have anything from the first day that stood out for you, like the elite division?
Your schedule as a broadcaster gets ruined if you go into overtime, because they will still start the next game on time, because the teams will just warm up elsewhere. So you just have less time to do any prep that you need, talk to any coaches or whatever
or
before.
Eat.
Yes.
Or
use the bathroom, whatever. You have to save it all for halftime of the following game.
Yeah. I just ended up peeing at like 4:00 in the afternoon. I think that's really just what happened. So that's one thing that you do learn. They don't often wait for you. But the U15 premiere today. Michigan Wolves beat Nationals Macomb to start things off. It was a pretty good game. Wolves, scored early, and then they added another one. Drew Eden is a player I think to look out for. He was everywhere. I think he's gonna. I don't know what his college plans are down there. I mean, this is U15. He's got a few years yet, but I think that's what's interesting. I would love to just like make a note of like all these players, like what kind of careers they have down the road, and like make a note of it. And like players like that. He'll probably be playing D1 somewhere.
Yeah, and I think the first game for me, the early one, the 8:30 here on Sunday, was a really interesting one. Oddly enough, it was. We talked about the overtime schedule. That one went into penalty kicks for me. So I had 3 minutes between my first game and my second game to get ready. But nonetheless, oddly enough, the game that went into penalty kicks had the game that, of all the games I did, the 8 that I saw this weekend, I think had the best team. It was Lakeshore FC against T-Bay's North Storm. T-Bay stands for Traverse Bay Area Youth Soccer, for those that aren't aware. Both really good teams. North Storm was pretty good. They have some guys who are going to go play Division I. This is the U19s. Some kids that are going to go play Division I next year. So does Lakeshore FC. But what impressed me the most was Lakeshore FC's all-around collectiveness as a unit. I understand that they teach communication, and that the older you get, the more that becomes a part of the game. And so it's understandable that the U19s would have the most communication of any game that we saw this weekend. But right from the beginning, as soon as the ball was kicked at the very start, the back line defense for Lakeshore FC, which had two brothers, Connor and Kyle Wendt, and also had a couple other kids who were going to be very good soccer players in the future. They were constantly talking, and they noticed immediately an issue with North Storm's defense. North Storm couldn't shape when they shifted the sides of the field. So when they switched the sides, they got plenty of opportunities for their wingers and their forwards on the front to get some good shots. For some reason, Lakeshore just never scored a goal. I don't know how it happened. They held possession so much throughout the first 90 minutes. They had so many good opportunities. They had a couple clear shots on net that were just sent a little bit wide. And their midfielders, Enrique Reyes and Steven Stidham, these guys were highlighted on the forum before when we were doing our prep as, players to look out for. First 10 or 15 minutes, I was like, okay, these guys aren't doing anything. After that, for the rest of the 75 minutes that we watched, Enrique Reyes and Steven Stidham were all over the place. Stidham's going to go play at Cornerstone next year. Look out for his name. I think he's going to be really good at Cornerstone and in that conference. Enrique Reyes was, I think, the best player I saw all weekend at making tackles and making them quickly. If he was within 3 feet of you and you had the ball, within 3 seconds you lost it. And it was just every single time. I'm amazed that they didn't win the game in regulation or in the first extra time of the extra 30 minutes that we played, but they did win it in penalties, 5-4. They made all their shots. T-Bay's North Storm did not. And it was a really fun game. I was just really impressed with Lakeshore FC. I've never seen a club put together that well and play and execute that well. They couldn't get a goal.
And I love the under 18 level because, I mean, if you're a soccer nut, which of course a lot of people who are listening to this are, watching those are the players that are going to be playing D1, D2, D3, NAIA next year. And so you get a sneak preview, like Michigan Power playing against FC Union. FC Union had, I believe, 4 players that are going to play at Michigan next year. There were a couple Michigan Staters, a Western Michigan. So there's players all over the field that you can check out and get a preview for the next college season. Michigan Power and a bunch of players, and had my second favorite name, Weyesu Victory Verge, scored a goal. Having Victory is like his second first name. I'm not entirely sure how this all works. I had like 5 minutes to get ready for this game, so I didn't have time to get into the background of everybody's name. But they scored a couple early goals, and then FC Union scored off a corner kick, and then had a penalty kick saved, and then they held on. Michigan Power held on. So, but yeah, just so many interesting and different players, but then all these players that are going to go play D1. And a couple of things I talked to some coaches about, some of the D3 schools are getting like D1 level talent. And you could really see, Grand Valley with the women, like, are dominant there. I heard a few people say that Hope College is going to be a dominant force in the next few years, because there are some D1 level players who are going to these schools and they just want to play for coaches they like, or maybe they're going with friends, or it's just, they're on the rise right now. And I guess we'll see how this all plays out in the years to come.
Yeah, and you mentioned the women's soccer at Grand Valley. I would be remiss if I didn't highlight any of the girls' games that I had. I had 2 this week, and they were both my finales, the 4 o'clock on Saturday and today on Sunday. The second one I had today, Thundercats 2010 Orange Girls against National Tri-County 10 Girls Black Team. Very fun game, very surprising. Similar to the Lakeshore game, where Thundercats, really good squad. We had to go into extras to decide it, and then sure enough, we got into extras, and they play 2 35 minutes, so you got to play 70 as regulation, and then it's 2 10-minute halves after that. And in the 74th minute, for the Thundercats, they had a young girl with the last name Villawak, who she was really good in the midfield all game, and she just kind of sent a prayer at the net. They had this strategy of putting the ball in the air and letting their fast outside wingers and attackers go and chase it down in the corner and get across. She kind of did that from about 40 yards out and just drilled it over the keeper's head and scored to take the lead 1-0. And then they got another one from Ari Nanzioni, who was just so fast and so sensational the full game. She had so many opportunities. She had a really good one in regulation that she blew and missed it wide right of the net. But then she had another chance to really seal the deal in the second half of the extra time period. And she put it in the back of the net really hard. You can tell she's a good soccer player. These are the U13s, and so there's not much that goes into the scouting and the X's and O's. There's so much development to be had. But a Thundercats team who, if those girls play together for the next couple years, I think they're going to be very, very good in Michigan State Club soccer. They have so much speed on the offensive ends, especially on the outside. Their middles do a nice job getting both back on defense and forward on offense and facilitating to their attackers. And Naomi Hardy is on that back line. She basically just plays 10 yards in front of the keeper the entire time. Anything that comes her way, she kicks as hard as she can, and she can kick the ball probably 80 yards. She took every set piece. She took every corner kick. She has a left leg on her, and I think she's going to be really good. She's going to be fun to watch.
And speaking of that, the U13s, it's always kind of a crapshoot where you're going to get with that, because like you said, there's so much development to be had. And then when Pato's Magic played Thundercats in the U13 Premier Division game, the game, like second to last game, the first 7 minutes, Pato scored a goal, both off corner kicks. Finley Hoddester is this, we're talking about like 12-year-olds here. And, corner kicks, I'm not expecting these big booming, driven corner kicks.
Right.
That's what he delivered. And I wasn't ready for it. I don't think anybody was ready for it. And they connected on a header in the 3rd minute. And then they got another corner kick 4 minutes later, and he drove it right into the middle of the box. And then, one of those pinball, things, a loose ball, and somebody pounced on it. And they were up 2-0. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, okay, this is just going to get out of hand. And Patos were up 2-0. And then, then the Thundercats came back. Dylan Dorian made a little not messy, like a Maradona run from midfield. He just kept going and going and going. And you're thinking, he's going to pass off. Nope, just kept going and going and going. And then he took a shot, got his own rebound. It was really just I'll take it from here, guys. I got it. And he scores a goal, and then they scored on a free kick. And this is when wind started to come into play, is that and nobody could get any goal kicks anywhere. And so the team that had the wind at their back was just shooting long distance shots, and the Thundercats tied it up on a free kick. And then in extra time, 3 minutes into extra time, Pato scored on a free kick with the wind at their back, and that's how it is. And that's pretty much how a lot of the games were. But that was one that where wind really came into play.
The wind was a huge factor for every team that we saw today, and I was just surprised at how consistent it was. Like, it never held up, especially on the first day. Today was not as windy, but yesterday it just never stopped after like 9:30. We started at 8:30, and after that it was consistent. It was the whole time. I don't know if it's because the Saginaw Township Soccer Complex is relatively flat, like most soccer complexes, and it just breeds wind, but my papers were flying everywhere. My laptop was covered in dust. I was upset because the wind just never stopped, and it's just like a nuisance by then. But
I was willing to sweat to death.
Yes,
it actually
I would have done that.
in like temperatures in the 80s yesterday, and I thought, oh, this wind is nice. It's keeping it relatively manageable. And by like halfway through, I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just sweat. I can't hold my papers. I need to get one of those like sleeves to put the papers in or something.
I had 85 paperweights on each corner of all my sheets, and it was rough, man.
Yeah, well, the last one I had was U16 Premier, T-Bay's North Storm. The only real, like, runaway game. It wasn't that they dominated so much. They just took advantage of their opportunities. And Aiden Orth scored a couple of goals. And they are actually, T-Bay's North Storm are undefeated in 2023. No draws, just wins. Very impressive way to end out the tournament for me.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Undefeated without any draws. I mean, that's like you say undefeated in soccer. There's kind of the silent understanding of like, okay, you got one or two draws in there, but yeah. No losses, no draws. That's impressive.
Yeah. So that's that. Any closing thoughts on your first trip to here? Like other than papers blowing everywhere and the wind constantly blowing us around.
No, it was a really fun time, a really fun place. A bunch of nice people here, both on the administration side, setting the event up, and parents and fans coming up and saying nice things and just making talk. The officials, I thought, the least thankful job is the official, and especially with youth soccer and especially with parents right there on the sideline, it's difficult. I thought they did a really good job this weekend. There was never anything, I think, way too out there, way too far, where I stepped back and said, oh, that was vastly incorrect and maybe something should have been changed and that changed the outcome of the game. That's a thankless job to be a referee, especially for youth soccer. They came out here, they were doing just as many games as we were. We had, same way that we have penalty kicks and we have 3 minutes in between games, we had refs coming across the complex in a golf cart. They got the police escort because they had a penalty kicks game and they had to be over here at field 3 to do the next game at 11 o'clock. So they do it just like we do, and I think they deserve their flowers as well.
Yeah, I got to chat with a few of the referees, and they were. I actually thought I didn't have very many complaints, but the one thing I will point out, a fun little thing, other than one of the referees completely wiping out, running down the sidelines, and I just looked at the other referees as they were trying not to crack up when it happened and trying to be professional. But this was a random one. I've never noticed this before. At halftime, they just decided to change referee shirts. For no reason. I don't even know what led to it. They were just sitting right next to my table, and they were like, hey, I think I'm going to change to green. And they all changed to green for no reason. They just wanted to see if anybody noticed. And that was how they mixed it up, I guess, for their day.
Got to do whatever to make it fun, I guess.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. The Saginaw Township Soccer Complex, they always put on a good event, and we had a lot of fun bringing it to the fans on YouTube. You can... we've got, I'm sure they'll have highlights or something on YouTube on the MSYSA channel, but we thank them for having us, and we had a good time bringing it to them.
Thank you so much to guests Josh Hakala, or contributors rather, Josh Hakala and Brendan Schabath with that report from Saginaw, Michigan. Very cool to see kids year after year in that tournament, and then ones that even go on to turn into pros. Chloe Ricketts, of course, last year referenced, this year a professional, and then I've seen a couple others move on the ranks too from doing that tournament. So thank you for that report, guys. Always like to hear that one. And from new contributors, thank you, Brendan, for filling in at the tournament, as well as aiding Josh in the tournament report. So be sure to check out MSC across all the social media platforms, and be sure to subscribe and like and do all those things with the YouTube channel, and tell all your friends about the show. We're trying to expand our coverage and do some more things and go more places. So the more people you tell about it, the easier that sort of thing goes. And as always, thank you to Jenny Hajnaki for editing this program. And thank you to the MSC core team for your help putting this all together and representing across there for Michigan Soccer Central. So this week, midweek, I'm off to Lansing to watch Oakland County travel to play Lansing City in USL2 action. And then this weekend, back on the call on 11 Sports for Oakland County FC, hosting South Bend Lions. That's my schedule. Oh, and I want to give a big tip of the hat and shout out to all the coaches and staff working at the tryouts this weekend. And kudos to all the kids who are going out there trying to progress as soccer players and get on a travel team that they want to play on. So everybody, please, until next time, enjoy your soccer.